Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am an adrenal burnout recovery expert, and I want to welcome you back to another edition of your Adrenal Fix. Today I want to talk to you about adrenal fatigue and gut problems. Practically all the patients that I consult with, whether they have a chronic condition, they have exhaustion, they can't get energized throughout the day, they don't have motivation, they're crashing around 2, 3 o'clock, they get shaky, lightheaded, or jittery when they don't eat, or they crash after a meal. They don't wake up with boundings amount of energy, and quite frankly, when they go to bed, they don't fall asleep like a baby like they should. They toss and turn, they're wired, they're stressed, they fall asleep, they get up, and they just feel like it's Groundhog Day the next day when the alarm rings and it's time to get up again. One of the common underlining theme is gastrointestinal inflammation. And so what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about how that relates to adrenal fatigue. Studies show that secretory IgA, which is an immune cell which lines the mucosal lining of your GI tract, so from the mouth to the saliva to the throat to the esophagus to the stomach to the intestines, we have little immune cells that act as our first line of defense. They're called secretory IgA. And when we are stressed, when we have cortisol that is constantly being elevated because of the demands that we have to meet every day, like our finances or our children or the environmental toxins or the pesticides in our foods or whatever it may be, those cortisol gets released, and the higher amounts of cortisol that gets released ultimately start to suppress secretory IgA. So all of a sudden, we have these invaders that are in our food, pathogens, bacteria, parasites, viruses, fungus, molds, all of these different critters that are in our food that our first line of defense, our secretory IgA, are not there to attack it and fight it. So what happens is, number one, these things go undissolved or unkilled and ultimately creates a lot of inflammation in our GI lining. Number two, what that causes is that causes intestinal permeability. And I've explained this before, but basically intestinal permeability or leakiness of the gut is such that when your gastrointestinal tract doesn't digest the foods optimally and there's inflammation, what happens is the metal strainer that we use to drain pasta not only drains the water, but it drains the pasta too. And so what ultimately happens is some of those food sources undigested go into our immune system, and that creates an immunological response from our cytokines. Sounds like fancy words, but basically what happens is our immune system tags these foods and creates antibodies. So now all of a sudden you've developed an immune response, a sensitivity, or an intolerance to, not an allergy, but an intolerance to certain foods like soy, egg, corn, rice, potato, gluten, dairy, hemp, millet, amaranth, quinoa. What else do we have? Potato. So many different things that you can develop food sensitivities to, all because initially that secretory IgA was being diminished because of the excess cortisol that was going on. So next thing you know, we have parasites that don't get disinfected. We have viruses that don't get killed off. We have bacteria that lingers. We have fungus and molds and candida. And all of these things create immune reactions in your gut. And the next thing you know, all of a sudden, your immune system is now asking the adrenal glands to say, hey, you guys got to help us out here. You got to give us a little bit of cortisol to reduce inflammation so that we can fight off these things. And at the end of the day, the adrenal glands are bewildered. And they're like, oh my goodness, I got to balance your blood sugar. I got to worry about finances, I gotta fight off infection, I gotta make sure secretory IgA is there, I gotta make sure that that I'm basically calming the entire immune system and settling inflammation in the body. And ultimately what happens is supply can't keep up with demand. And then we have the stress saving account where it goes in the red, and we have non-sufficient funds, and we crash. And so some of the things that we experience when we crash are anxiety. So think of the adrenal glands like the clutch of a car. When you're shifting gears efficiently, there's not a jerky ride, but when you shift gears abruptly, then all of a sudden you're jerky and you can't really keep up with the speed of traffic. Same thing that happens in life is when you have inappropriate responses to stress, you get anxiety, or you get panic attacks, or you get irritability, or you get frustration or anger, or you even cry, or you just feel overwhelmed. And that's a result of the adrenal glands becoming fatigued and not being able to keep up with demand. So hopefully you found this edition informative. So the other thing too is so what should you do? What we typically suggest is going off of these inflammatory foods. So in the very least, get off of gluten, get off of dairy. The other things you can do is get off of soy, you can get off refined sugars, you can get off of alcohol. And then my patients will say, well, what do I eat? What is there left for me to eat? Well, try this for 30 to 60 days, because better than a food sensitivity test is actually removing these foods from your diet, and then after 30, 60 days, reintroduce one. And I wouldn't reintroduce gluten or dairy. Those need to be gone forever. You need to look in the mirror and say, I'm accepting that I'm no longer eating gluten and dairy. But as far as the other foods, potentially refined sugars and alcohol should be removed as well. So now you're left with, okay, I can reintroduce corn, or I can reintroduce eggs, or I can reintroduce rice or potato. What you need to do is do it one every third day. And if you don't have any inappropriate responses, so what are some of these responses? Anxiety, when I eat pasta, I actually get shaky and anxious. So I know for 100% certainly I can't eat that. But sometimes they're a little less they're a little more benign, or they're a little less observant. So you may feel just a little bit of skin irritation, or breaking out, or acne, or gastrointestinal distress, or non-solid movements, or non-movements, or brain fog. There's something that you're going to be able to tell that this food is not necessarily good. And that's the best test of all, is to remove it for 30, 60 days and then reintroduce one every 3 days and see if you're responding to it. I guarantee it's kind of like putting your hand in cold water and then putting your hand in hot water. If you would have just put it in hot water, it wouldn't have felt that hot. But if you put it in cold water and then put it in hot water, it's going to feel real hot. What does that mean? It means once you remove these foods for a long period of time and then reintroduce them, it's going to be like you're resetting your gut flora, and you'll know if there's a response, like putting your hand in cold and then hot water. So hopefully, again, like I said, you found this edition of your Adrenal Fix interesting today. If you liked what I had to say, then please give me a thumbs up, or a share, or a comment. I always welcome those. And also check out my blog. It's Adrenal Fatigue Society, and I look forward to helping you in your adrenal nightmare. Thank you so much.